and welcome back everyone. Today I have a lovely mug of chai with me today. Which is still cold on the bottom, so I'm going to be warming it up after we're done here. And number 2, yeah, I know there's not a number 1. It's fine. Number 2, we're back to Aster's point of view today, and I promise we'll be actually getting some plot this time. So you can look forward to that. Alright. Chapter 6. Aster. It didn't end. A few days crept by, plagued with silence brought about by the loss of my brother. Neither me or Talia spoke much, only emphasizing the drastic change. I was ill. Plagued by stomach and chest pains, I spent most of the time in bed. Sometimes I thought I was going to suffocate. Other times, with nausea so bad I vomited. Talia stayed with me, bringing me water and a little food, and cleaning things up when I made a mess. I felt frustrated by my condition, but there was nothing I could do about it. I was glad to have Talia, but who I really wanted was Adyen. Adyen wasn't coming back. That was something I needed to accept. I didn't want to. If only there was some small hope. But I had seen the knife. I'd seen the blood. There was no more irrefutable proof than that. Eventually, the nausea became less and less frequent, and some of my strength started to come back. I started to eat more of what Talia put in front of me, even though I still didn't have much of an appetite. Finally, everything seemed to culminate in a kind of numbness. One morning, I woke up and found the roaring pain replaced with nothing. It certainly wasn't joy. I would never feel that again. And it wasn't grief either. I already knew what that felt like. It was blankness in the place where emotions were supposed to be. I found it to be a mercy. Sometimes I still wouldn't be able to breathe. The attacks would come out of nowhere, and every inhale caused pain to stab through my chest. They would last for a few minutes, or for an hour. I didn't know what caused them, and Talia was baffled as well. But I didn't care any longer. That was the scary part. Without the emotions, my desires no longer seemed to exist either. But without Adyen, what more was left to life? I had nothing. Aster. Talia spoke into the quiet. I sat at the table, staring listlessly at the lantern flame, watching it flicker back and forth without really seeing anything. The motion had become rote, a background noise. Aster, she said again. I looked up at her. Talia stood there, her eyes cast downward. Her clothing was similar to mine, a loose cream-colored shirt and a long patterned skirt that halted around her ankles. A petticoat underneath made the skirt thick and full. Talia held the unmarked tome I'd seen on the shelf in Adyen's room. I was in his room earlier, she admitted. I apologize if I wasn't supposed to be. I found this. I thought you might want to look at it. She set the volume on the table. A small sense of curiosity poked at me, and I pulled the book over. The leather cover was embossed with a swirling design of 2 birds, their wings spread as they flew upwards together. I briefly traced the design with a finger, wondering where Adyen had even found it. Talia softly moved away and busied herself at our tiny kitchen, preparing another meal. I'd lost all track of time long ago, so I didn't even know which one it was. That was the problem with living underground. We had no days or nights here. Running my hand over the cover, I slowly pulled the book open. On the first page, a name jumped out at me, written in a ridiculously fancy and familiar script. Property of Adyan. Whosoever openeth this journal without my express permission is doomed to a lifetime of tickling. I'd never known Adyan kept a journal. The ink was smudged and a little faded in places, indicating that it had been a long time ago when he'd first written these words. Ignoring the warning in true twin sister fashion, I turned to the first entry. It was dated from over a year ago, shortly before we met Talia. Aster is finally happy for the first time in a while. We found an old abandoned building that can serve as our permanent base so long as Lars doesn't find it. Not that he's found any of our other safe areas, but those aren't big enough for the two of us anymore. Here, we each have our own room. It's dusty and bare, but it will be warm in the cold weather. No more long nights of desperately hoping we won't freeze. Malia gave this to me the other day, when I was picking up cold herbs. She said that it's too fancy to use as a logbook, so she wanted to see what I could do with this. I'll admit, I like the idea of keeping a journal. All the ancient explorers and archaeologists of the old times kept journals. I probably won't find much, but you never know. Sometimes life takes funny directions. Assuming we even manage to get out of this city, I might actually have a decent chance at following that dream. Lars Alfred is holding most of our money hostage. Occasionally, he'll pay us, but that's only enough for food and a few other necessities. I regret entering into this agreement with him, but I didn't have a choice. A man like him can't have Aster. I need to be careful not to become jaded. I do believe there's a man out there who does deserve her, and when he reveals himself, I must be ready to give my blessing. Thus concludes the first entry of Adyan the First Journal. Again, if you are reading this without my express permission, you may find yourself the victim of many tickles. I reread the words slowly, carefully. I could almost hear Adyan speaking through the faded swirls of ink. His written voice was so rich and alive. I remembered his desire to become an explorer. His deepest dream was to travel every inch of Terracor and discover the wonders that would await him. I would go with him on this adventure if I could. Of course I would. A tiny piece of sadness pushed through the numbness in my heart. This would never happen. I will go for you. One day, when all is well, I will go in your place. Skipping a few pages, I flipped forward and found the entry from the day we'd met Talia. I know using my power kills a little piece of my life force every time I use it, but it feels so good to be able to use it for good. Aster and I met someone today. We were in the market getting food when she noticed a commotion by one of the shops. Aster, of course, headed right toward it, determined to jump in head first, but I stopped her so we could observe. It looked like a few low-level gang members found a victim to beat up. Before long, they dispersed and we hurried to check the aftermath and see if we could do anything. We may live in the broken city, but it is my belief that we shouldn't add to the brokenness. Not everyone here is bad, and I am eternally grateful to all the good people in Broton that kept us alive after our parents died. This is the best way I know how to repay them. The victim was a young woman around our age. Her leg had been badly injured, and she'd been beaten badly, but she was still alive. I imagine the thugs had left her to die. Not on my watch. We brought her back to our dwelling, and I used my power on the worst of her wounds. I was too scared to expend enough power to completely heal her leg, but I think I did enough to bring her out of danger. She's resting now. Once she's better, we'll let her go back to whatever home she has. The words blurred in front of me, without full knowledge of why. Blinking a few times, I tried to refocus, but it didn't help much. My chest tightened as another one of the attacks hit me. This was Adyen, his purest, most basic form. We'd been alone for so much of our lives, and he knew what it was like to live in this city. He knew that without someone else, most people barely scraped by, surviving rather than living. He knew what an impact kindness would make. And so he gave. In a city that took and took and took, Adyen chose to give. He'd given his time, his energy, his compassion, and even in some cases like Talia's, even pieces of his life. I had done my best to follow in his footsteps, but I wanted to go to the root of the problem and destroy the gangs. I wanted to help, but I also wanted to destroy. The darkness that came as the result of my power could never be fully quenched. Adyen's light had been a beautiful contrast that softened my edges. Lars Alfred had killed him. He'd put out that light like it was nothing. It had been everything. A coldness swept through me and I became very still. My hands curled into fists. I could feel the darkness stirring within me, but I didn't bother to squash it. I needed the power because Lars Alfred wouldn't be allowed to get away with what he'd done. He'd ripped me in half, thought I'd been broken, and he was right. I was broken. But I was also angry, and I was going to repay him in kind for all he had destroyed. Talia, I said. Aster? She turned toward me, a slightly perplexed expression on her face. I hadn't been speaking much, and when I did, it was in a soft, distant voice. No doubt she'd been surprised by my change in attitude. Is everything all right? Lars Alfred needs to pay for what he did, I said. You know how much Adyen means to those he saved. You know how kind he was. Lars can't be allowed to get away with that. Talia set down the dish she'd been holding, and I knew she understood what I was saying. We don't even know where he is. I know how I can find him, I said. I know who his informants are. And I was confident I could get them to talk. I leaned forward earnestly. I need your help, Talia. When it comes time to take him down, I won't be able to do it alone. Someone has to distract him so I can get close enough. Talia paused, biting her lip. Aster, you know I can't fight. You won't have to fight, I promise. Just keep his attention on you. Talia remained silent, and I could tell she still wasn't sure. I promise it will be worth it. I was so certain that this is what I needed to do, that I was certain that failure would be the last straw, should Adyen remain unavenged. Still, Talia hesitated. Please, I whispered. I need you. Finally, Talia seemed to relent. Okay, she said. I will help you.